Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Deidre with Are You a CPS Victim Like Me? I am joined here today with a guest, Kim Page from, I believe, Alabama, and she is going to be sharing her story today with how she has become a victim of CPS. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor over to Kim. Maybe if you want to introduce yourself and how this first came about, and then go ahead and share your story.
Thank you for having me, Deidre.
You're welcome.
My name is Kim Page. I have four children. My oldest is 26. My youngest is 9. My 26-year-old was not involved with anything in relation to my case. My 21-year-old daughter, my 10-year-old son, and my 9-year-old son were involved with CPS situations. In 2019, January of 2019, my daughter had an emergency room visit, and the hospital handled her situation very poorly, prompting me to make the statement of it being a lawsuit waiting to happen, and that made them call CPS on me. Uh, Prior to that, I was in a domestic violence relationship with a man whose children had previously been taken by CPS more than once. The explanation he gave me was that it was his wife that did it and it was never him. And of course, since I couldn't see his records, I had no choice but to believe my husband. And since she had passed away, she couldn't defend
Mm,
herself. So, I believed my husband. Found out later on that it was him. And we ended up having CPS involved with his children, never with mine while we were married, but with his children. In the process of his children prompting CPS involvement in our lives, CPS knew that he was violent towards me. And they knew that he had broke my nose, he had broke my arm. There
mm.
was quite a bit of domestic violence, and I asked for help multiple times, received none. The last incident, he assaulted my daughter. She was 14. She was on crutches, and he assaulted her. And of course, I jumped in to defend my daughter. This resulted in both of us having a felony domestic violence charge brought against us. I later found out that the reason for my getting the charge was because the officer failed to tell his supervisor that my ex husband had attacked my daughter. He just made it out to seem like my husband and I were fighting. My charges was sent to the grand jury. Grand jury chose not to indict, so everything on mine was dropped. But my ex husband fled. That gave me a 2-year restraining order, and during that time, I took that time to be able to get my children and myself out of the house, away from him. He spent 73 days in jail, and that's when we got out. As soon as he got out of jail, he began stalking us.
Mm.
And I've got a restraining order against him, but that piece of paper doesn't do a whole lot of good. So he began stalking us. He finds out where we live. He finds out where I'm working. He's coming to my job. He's coming to my house. End up going to work one day, and my daughter calls me about 45 minutes after I get to work. Mom, somebody's shooting at the house. Somebody's shooting at the house.
Mm. Oh my goodness.
Um, so we have to leave that house. We go and find somewhere else. About 4 months later, my daughter wakes me up in the middle of the night. Mom, I smell smoke. And we go looking to see what's smoking, and the front porch is on fire. One of my neighbors tells us they saw a vehicle leaving my driveway, and it's my ex husband's brother's vehicle.
Oh
So
wow.
we end up having to move several times, eventually moving into hotels because we're trying to do something to keep him from being able to find us. The whole time, unbeknownst to me, CPS is the one giving him my address.
What? Why?
Yes. We I don't know. We had to have food stamps, and so my address was on record with the CPS office, and they were giving him my contact information so that he could find us. So
That makes no
eventually,
sense.
it makes no sense at all, especially since they know there was a restraining order against him. And I spoke with CPS. I said, "Look, there's a restraining order against him, but it's only against him in relation to me, not specifically the kids. What is CPS's standpoint on this restraining order in relation to the children. And they told me when there's a restraining order against one parent to the other, we consider that an umbrella order. And if you allow him around the children, we will take your children. So,
Oh,
of
but
course,
they're giving him your address. I mean,
right. So I'm terrified to make sure he doesn't come around my kids because I don't want to lose my kids, but they're facilitating him finding us.
yeah.
So we're bouncing around. Hotels are not cheap. It's not $500 a
Oh,
month
yeah.
for a hotel. We're talking $2,000. I'm dealing with PTSD from the domestic violence. My daughter has a lot of health issues. I'm dealing with major depression. And if you've ever dealt with depression, depression's not just, oh, I'm sad, I'm crying. It is a physical thing. You physically hurt. It's like flu on steroids. You can't move. You have no motivation to do anything. I would sleep 24 hours a day if I was able to do so, but I'm still trying to get up and take care of my kids. And I'm not being the best parent that I can be, but I definitely was not neglecting my children or not providing for my children. But I'm going through all this stuff, and CPS is, let's just tell them where you're at some more. So I spend all this time running, and then 2019 comes around, and they take my children,
What
and
was the
they have me
reason?
arrested. They have me
You got
arrested.
arrested?
I did. They had me arrested, and I was in jail for 21 days.
Wait, what was the reason why they took your kids?
They took my kids because I threatened to sue the hospital for medical malpractice.
So then CPS decides to take your kids.
Yes,
That was the allegation?
that was the allegation. That was the
I've never even heard of that.
Now in the indicated letter, they actually stated that my daughter was the person that was the problem, not me, because I was relying on my daughter to watch her brothers while I worked. And they alleged that my daughter was on drugs and alcohol, and she was watching her brothers while she was drinking and consuming drugs. My daughter has never, ever tested positive for anything other than medication that was prescribed to her by a doctor.
Yeah,
She's
but see,
never
there's the tricky part right there. I don't know if you saw the show that Mr. Davis had on recently with that attorney that specializes in all the different, drug tests and whatnot. But I mean, he goes into great detail, so you might want to look that up. But I mean, nowadays, medication like that could come up as like a false positive or
yes.
in any kind of like positive on their end, meaning you don't even have time to justify this drug test for any means or shape or form. And here it could have just simply been her medication.
Yeah, but
You
they
know?
never tested her. They never tested her. See,
Oh, okay.
here's the thing. Here's the big thing that I've left out. My daughter was pregnant when
Oh,
she went to the hospital, and
oh,
they wanted the baby. That's all
oh,
it was.
yeah.
She
That's
was
exactly.
she was 17. Her child's father was 26.
Oh,
Um, there was an age difference. Um, my daughter's got a lot of health issues, and from what we've been told by doctors, her life expectancy is 40, 45 years. So my daughter grew up really fast because of that. They did not expect her to be able to have children. So while the normal response would be to my 17-year-old getting pregnant or getting pregnant by a 26-year-old would have been, oh my God, because of me knowing that her lifespan is supposed to be so shortened, I didn't have that. I wanted my daughter to be able to have the experience of being a mother. And her husband is an amazing man. The child's father is fantastic. He is such a good guy. He is such a great guy.
real
But
quick, can I interrupt and ask you, did CPS use the fact that technically she wasn't even 18?
well,
Yeah, I was gonna.
in Alabama, the age of consent is 16.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The age of majority in Alabama is 19. We're one of
Mm,
only 2 states in the country that it's 19, not 18.
mm.
So she did have legal right of consent, but they actually tried to go after him for statutory rape at one point.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Fast forward to May of 2019, My daughter goes into the doctor and they find out that my grandchild has a severe birth defect and she's
Uh-oh.
going to need several surgeries after she's born.
Oh
Well,
no.
nobody wants a baby that needs all that. So they're not going to be able to sell this baby to anybody.
Yeah,
So they
really.
put brakes on it, emancipated my daughter, and arranged for her to get married to the man that they were trying to say raped her.
Oh gosh.
Yes. And
Yeah, my
then,
story is exactly like yours, but in the opposite fact of when my case opened, little did I know I was 7 months pregnant at the time. And meaning now that I know everything about it, it's like as if they only wanted to kind of make this a case knowing that I was 7 months pregnant and then, obviously keep it going to where when the baby came out, that's when I found out that it was taken right from the hospital. And, of course, given to a perfect scenario of, a foster couple that had never, can't have kids, never had kids, was their first time having a placement. And here they were gifted beautiful 1-month-old baby straight in their lap, and then they just kept our case going and going and going because then at one point at the very end when I had my TPR, then they used that against me saying that it would be more detrimental to break the bond
yep.
that he now has with these foster parents than to go back home with his biological parents. And I'm just thinking like, did you really just say that? Like he only has this so-called bond with these people because you have never let him return home. Like it's just sickening how much, but I didn't want to interrupt you too much more, but it's
To the
just sick
bond,
how you.
to the bond point in 2020, our governor actually passed a bill or signed a bill into law which allows CPS in Alabama to terminate a parent's rights based only on the bond of the child to the fosters. That
God,
is grounds for termination.
wow.
So they actually even told my daughter that if she allowed me around my grandchild, they would take my grandchild.
Wait, so now they decided to turn the tables because they realized it's not an adoptable baby. No, won't make any money off of it. So now they kind of like tried to set her up perfectly to keep her baby and get married and move along. But now they still wanted to threaten if you came around this baby, then all of a sudden they would take it.
Yep. Yep.
And then what was the allegation against you now this time? It was because of what? I'm sorry, I forget.
The actual indicated letter came back that I was allowing my daughter to watch my boys
Oh yeah,
while she was
wow.
under the influence of drugs and alcohol. But that's not
But
what
then if she was
my
pregnant,
TPR trial was about.
oh
My
wow,
TPR trial it had none of that in it.
oh
No, the
wow,
TPR trial was I moved too much and my house was a mess.
oh Lord have mercy. So it had nothing to do with why they were taken in the first place.
Nope,
Now, did you know if they had a warrant when they came to take your children?
they
Did they
did
show
not.
you a?
They did not.
See that right? That right there, I've learned from Mr. Davis is if they don't have a warrant to come in your house, do not let them in, and if they don't have a warrant to take your kids, do
Yep.
not let them take them.
Well, what they did was they had me arrested so they could cite exigent circumstances.
And then you were arrested for what?
I was arrested because, according to them, I had a traffic violation that I had not gone to court for. This was a
And so you
traffic
get arrested.
This was a traffic violation from 5 years prior that had already been taken care of.
Oh, Lord have mercy. So your constitutional rights were in Fourth Amendment rights, they were all
Yeah,
violated, meaning you could easily have a civil case lawsuit after this, but like Mr. Davis says, winning a civil lawsuit doesn't necessarily mean you get your kids back,
right.
so
Well, they
okay, so
actually
then you're
put in the initial petition for removal when they actually finally filed. They put in there that when I was arrested, I had 7 felony warrants. I didn't have any felony warrants. The only felony anything I'd ever had was that domestic violence I spoke about
like that
earlier,
drop.
but that was dropped. That was completely dropped. When we went to my TPR trial, they actually fabricated warrants, and one of them, the warrant, they're saying that I have. They're saying it's out of a jurisdiction that actually doesn't even have jurisdictional authority to issue a warrant. The county has to issue it. They're saying it's a city that has it on me, but the city, as per that state's law, because it's another state, as per that state's law,
Oh my
cities
God.
are not allowed to issue warrants, only counties are. But according to the CPS attorney, I've got a warrant in that county, a felony warrant in that city. So we have fraud upon the court just on that aspect.
Wow.
But
Okay, so let's back up a little bit here. So time frame wise. So your kids get taken and you get arrested. Where do your kids go when you're in jail?
My daughter went to a group home. They actually took
Okay.
her from the hospital before they filed the petition.
Mhm.
And then my boys were taken the very next day.
And did
The
they go into
boys,
foster?
yes, the boys went into foster care. And when the CPS worker that took my children, my boys were 4 and 5 years old. They were
Oh,
still the age that needed car seats.
oh
She
yeah.
was trying to put my children in the car without a car seat. I had
Oh
to get the
wow.
sheriff's deputies to force her to take my car seats. And then when she puts them in, she puts them in so haphazardly, they were flopping all over the place, and she didn't care. But their godmother was on the way to pick them up, and she refused to let the godmother come.
Oh wow.
Yes,
That is so wrong from so many different avenues.
it is. It is.
Wow.
So they went into foster care. They went with a couple that probably make $150,000 a year.
What, off of having other foster kids?
No, actually, they did not have any foster kids at that time. About 2 months after they got my children, they got a set of infant twins.
Hmm.
So they went to this foster care, and they were there for a while. The man was really nice. I really liked him. I was really glad that my boys got a chance to be around this man. He taught them things that my husband should have taught my kids, but he was more interested in drugs and domestic violence. So I was really, really grateful that my kids were with this man. His wife, on the other hand, was just an absolute wench. She believed everything CPS told her. They told her that I was on drugs. They told her that I was prostituting my daughter. They told her that I was beating my boys.
That's not even allowed, though, I thought, to share information about you and your case to these foster. I mean, as far as I'm considered to know, they're just allowed to take care of the kids and keep them in good health and whatever until you supposedly reunite with your children. I mean, they're not allowed to know anything about your case and
They
nothing.
knew a lot. I actually
Wow.
I represented myself in my for the majority of the case. And I actually, when I got discovery, I was able to see that this woman had actually she had made a statement or a report to CPS telling CPS that her and her husband had gone to the local library for an event they had, and it was about children and trauma. And they did a test called ACEs, and it's an evaluation to kind of see what your trauma level is and how that can affect you later on. And she stated in this statement to CPS that my children's ACEs level was through the roof because of the things that CPS had told her my children had been through.
Meaning, if she didn't have that information from CPS, how would she have been able to like fabricate this ACEs test? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Your children are 4 and 5. Like, come on. Like,
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
just wow.
Well,
So
I ended
now you were in jail for 21 days, and that must have been death upon death. Because did you even get to communicate with your children by any means? Or,
nope,
I mean, God,
not at
you had
all.
no idea where they even were or what was going on that whole time.
No clue. No
Wow.
idea.
So then you get out, and then you obviously find out they're with this couple. But why didn't the godmother still get a chance to take placement of them?
They wouldn't let her.
There a reason?
They wouldn't let her. They just said she's
Wow.
not family.
She's not family. It could be family or friends, Mr. Davis has told us. And they could be even in a different country, he says. I mean, it
The
doesn't even have to be in the same state. It could be in a different country.
my kid's godmother is a pastor's wife. Their godfather tried to get them as well, and he's a cop. They wouldn't let him have them.
Wow.
They wouldn't let him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like my scenario. The paternal grandmother of my kids. Since day one, she tried to take all three of my kids, and thankfully, it was a good thing, but a bad thing. But my two olders went to my mom and are still with my mom. But my youngest, my mom literally has never acknowledged since the day he's been born because she thought that I needed to just give him up because of this case, and that's why he got placed into a foster family. But even when we had our TPR hearing and now the paternal grandmother was actually there in court stating, why have I never been able to get placement of my grandchildren? Meaning, if you would have placed him with me, these foster parents wouldn't even be in existence in this case. Because how they were trying to use the fact that they have this bond with my child, meaning they would have never even been taken to these people if you would have just let the paternal grandmother take, my child. And, then again, they use that against her as far as my child doesn't even know her. Well, yeah, of course he doesn't know her, because how is he supposed to know her when these people have him? And
Right.
so, yeah, that was like basically still to this day, it like just everything about it all just drives me crazy. But it's like, how could they expect, my child to know a family member if you never let the family member have the child?
Hmm.
But then in this case, like yours, it's like they shut out family members or friends, godparents, whatever, and put them in these foster homes because, again, they're wanting these people to adopt.
Yeah.
Especially if your child's adoptable, that's exactly what they want.
And mine are blonde hair, blue eyed little boys.
Yeah.
So they very much were adoptable. They ended up about 18 months into the case.
Oh my gosh, it went that long?
No. We're still fighting I'm still fighting my case.
Oh, you still don't have your children?
My children aren't home yet.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Ha-
They're coming
Have
home.
you even have you had unsupervised visits with them at least?
They never gave me unsupervised. Never
That
once.
was
The
like me.
entire case.
My visits never got liberalized the whole
Nope.
entirety of the case.
Nope. They actually took visits away from me because some woman an hour away from me took her took her children off of a visit. And I actually commented on a Facebook post about it. So they took my visits away from me because of that. They took my
Wow.
visits away from me because I refused to allow one of their therapists to supervise my visits after we had already had an issue with that therapist.
Oh yeah, I found that out too the hard way, meaning the social worker of the foster agency, meaning completely biased, but unbeknownst to me, she was the one that would always supervise the visit with my youngest and my husband and myself. And little did I know, yeah, of course she's always doing the write-ups of the reports and how the visit went. Granted, she really didn't have any concrete evidence to say anything necessarily was bad, but just the way she would write something. Like there was so many times I have the whole text messages feed between her and me and the foster parents since day one, all the way through, up until even to this day, I have it all. But there were so many times where they would, say, oh, is there any way we can change our Friday visit to, Thursday because of this? And, I'd be flexible. And then, if I ever wanted to ask for a change, never would happen. Or if I was running late, I would definitely always communicate with them. Every visit beforehand, I would always confirm, whatever. But the couple times that I would be late, the way she would write it, just everything that was written very in favor of the foster parents. And it's like, I learned all of this so late in the game because we got played in the fact of here I was thinking if I had to have my child in this kind of situation, we honestly felt like we had kind of like the best kind of scenario, meaning this couple they're Mormon, they're blonde haired, blue eyes. My child is half black, half white. And they played us to the point where they wanted to make it seem like they would do anything and everything they could do to help us reunify. But little did we know all along the way, they were just wanting our child.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't come out until we were facing our TPR. And so we had to do what they consider a post-adoption contract agreement or something, as far as if and when, what kind of visitation I would possibly have if the adoption were to come to play. And, that was just sickening in itself to have to think that I would even have to come up with an agreement like that. Cause I was still thinking there's no way in heck I'm going to lose my child and they're going to adopt him. Right. So I guess I had to come up with an agreement with my husband. We're like, okay, well, at least maybe once a month, and I'm even thinking that's like traumatic. They came back with saying once a year, maybe on his birthday. And I just lost it. And then we overheard them before court one of the days, stating to their attorney, because now all of a sudden they had an attorney. They had filed de facto parent status, so now they could be in the courtroom and be all involved. And they told their attorney something along the lines of, yeah, we need to hurry up this case along because we need to keep our son, or something like that. They started telling me then on visits going forward that we need to address them as mommy and daddy or mama and dada. And I'm like, I just, all their true colors came out. And it's just sad to think that there's people out there that really do exist like this. It's like, there are so many children out there that need a good home and need to be adopted. Why are you trying to take my child from me? Like,
Right.
we were involved to the fullest since day one, did everything of our case plans and then some, and we were just railroaded like left and right to the fullest because, of course, they just wanted to adopt our child out because these foster parents obviously wanted to adopt. With real quick stating that, I mentioned on my show on Tuesday that my biggest like confusion still to this day is they terminated my rights for my youngest because of the fact that the foster parents were willing to adopt. But my mom, that has my two older boys, she would only be willing to do legal guardians. She didn't want to adopt them. And she even said to my social worker at one time, like, I have a feeling that my daughter will open her eyes one day and do whatever she needs to do and get her children back. Little did I know she was also contributing to the fact that they were never reunited because she wanted me to leave my husband and I never did and I never have. But she is the legal guardian, meaning I technically have not lost my rights.
Right.
So when and if I'm ready to go back to court to hopefully terminate the legal guardianship to get my children back, the possibility is still there. But with my youngest, because the foster parents want to adopt, it's like done deal. Meaning, why couldn't the courts tell the foster parents to do legal guardianship? Like, that part just does not make sense to me. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're okay to be a parent and still possibly, get your kids back and not have your rights terminated for your other kids, but not this one just because they want to adopt. But then
Right.
again, it's all about the money and all about the funding, and that's exactly what they want.
That's exactly what they
So
want.
it's like, okay, your rights are going to be terminated for this child because they're willing to adopt. But because she's just willing to do legal guardianship, we're not going to terminate your rights. Like, you're like, it's like when you hear these stories about parents that have one child in their care, but yet they don't have another child. It's like, how can you be a fit enough parent to have one child but not the other?
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I don't know where you were with your story.
You're okay. So, my children were transferred to another foster home at 18 months. Because in the first foster home, they were acting out. They wanted to come home after every visit. I'm looking through the discovery, and the foster woman, the first one, she was, after every visit, they're problematic. There are always problems after visit. There's always problems after visit. It was consistently every single report. There's always a problem after visit. Any psychologist will tell you that's because they don't want to be with you. They want to be with their mother. That's
She was hoping it would be reversed and make it seem like whenever they're around the mom, then, that's the problem and that's why they come back. But no, it's the opposite, meaning they don't want to go back to you. They want to stay with their mom.
Right. And the visitation supervisor was putting in there, mom is great. I mean, I actually had people, the visitation supervision organization were telling me that they wished I would teach other parents how to be a better parent. I would come in.
I subpoenaed one of mine and came to my TPR hearing, and I had her take the stand because of how much she could not believe that she would see me every week. I mean, I would come in with the wagon and with the bungee cords, everything hanging off, the cooler, the ice chest, my kid's Xbox even at one point.
We could make homemade pizza. My son's
everything.
I brought in the griddle and we did design your own pancakes. I mean, we would do all of these things.
Yeah. We even celebrated birthdays there to where I'm bringing in balloons and decorating the whole room beforehand. I mean, you figure that's the only time you get with your kids. And so if you're the good enough mom, I mean, they would every week, they would like just be waiting to see what it was that I was bringing this week. It was almost like I entertained them all, but still I had her subpoenaed to come and take a stand and speak on my behalf. But, of course, anything that is good and positive that is on your side, it's almost like they don't even want to give any attention to it.
They had the visitation company. They actually threatened to stop using the last visitation company. We ended up having 6 visitation companies.
Oh my God.
Because they kept all saying good things about me. So CPS wanted them to get out of the picture. So the last one that came in was actually doing in-home services. Now, I've already done in-home services twice before, but we're having to do it again. Okay, whatever. So the last one, they actually threatened them that if they came to court and testified on my behalf, they would stop using them for their services across the country.
Good Lord.
So they refused to come testify because they were going to lose the bulk of their financial ability to pay their employees because if they came to testify in my case. But after 18 months, my kids were transferred to a lesbian couple.
Oh no.
And I
And
want to
it's
say it was
two
my
boys.
fourth visit after they were moved to this new place. My older son comes to visit and he's got a rash. Now the
Oh no.
visitation supervisor, she says before we get out, at this point we're being allowed to have visits out in the public. So we're having visits at a bowling alley today. And she gets there and she says, before you go see the boys, I need to let you know your older son has a rash. It's poison ivy. He was playing outside. And of course, I look at it. Now, I went through school for to be an LPN. So I'm very familiar with, what rashes look like. Got 4 kids. This child, she said that the Fosters told her that it was poison ivy. Now, the Fosters, these women are both nurse practitioners, a much higher LPN, okay? My son does not have poison ivy. This is chicken pox.
Oh
And they
no.
are just acting like it's no big deal. So I'm having to deal with, but they don't send calamine lotion. They don't send any allergy medicine. They don't send anything for him. So for 2 hours, I'm sitting here having to, swat his hand away from scratching. So when we get done with visit, I immediately emailed the caseworker and I said, look, they're saying this is poison ivy. It's clearly not. It's chicken pox. The Fosters turned it around and said that I poisoned my kids. When I get discovery, come to find out, and CPS ran with it. CPS ran with it and said that I poisoned my kids. Come to find out, the Fosters had communicated with the CPS worker the day before my visit and told the CPS worker the day before my visit about my son's rash, told them that he had this rash. They were putting a prescription ointment on it. They didn't go to the doctor. They apparently prescribed this ointment to him themselves, which is medical, And
But now, if you did that as a mother, not take your child to the doctor, you would have had them taken for neglect and all this kind of stuff.
Exactly. So after I email and I'm like, look, they need to go get looked at because this is clearly not poison ivy. I'm looking through this document, the communication between the foster and the CPS worker, and she's like, well, the day before, the foster said it was bug bites. After my visit, she says, well, we think the reason they're spreading is because he keeps scratching. Now, what bug bites spread?
But yeah, wait, the end result was you poisoned them.
The end result is they tried to say that I poisoned my children.
But in a supervised visit, meaning where's your supervisor then? How could you be poisoning your children with a supervisor on hand?
The visitation supervisor at this time held a bar license in 3 states. So you know that she knew how to supervise a visit properly to make sure no illegal activity was going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was accused of poisoning my children.
And the judge really took that into consideration and believed it.
I had 11 judges recuse or disqualify from my case.
Oh my Lord. Oh my Lord.
12 judges. 12 judges recuse or disqualify from my case.
What's your next hearing coming up? What is it?
Well, we went through a TPR hearing back in December, so we're out of the lower court at this point. You're dealing with what?
They did.
But here's the thing, Deidre. My children were only ruled dependent in February of 2019. According to Alabama law, the children must be ruled dependent within 6 months of the TPR. Otherwise, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. They were ruled dependent February 2019. We had TPR December 2022. We never had an adjudication hearing. It had to be ordered by the appeals court to be done, and it was never completed. It was held in abatement after we started it, which means they weren't even legally able to proceed with the TPR hearing. Yes. So that's where I'm at right now, is fighting all that.
So you put in an appeal for the TPR.
Yep.
But see, I obviously did the same thing. And when my appeals attorney contacted me, he of course kind of explained to me as much as he could as far as making sense of it all. But as far as I took in, it's like when you put in an appeal to a TPR hearing, you're pretty much only looking at like the very end of your case. Meaning, let's say if I feel like they did something completely wrong that happened like in the very beginning of my case, let's just say, the way Mr. Davis kind of has explained it that made sense to me is like there's modules, and let's pretend like the whole thing is broken up into 5 modules, and you think something that was done wrong happened in module 1, but now you're in module 5 and you have your rights terminated. Putting in an appeal can't necessarily do anything about what happened in module 1. If you didn't agree with that, you should have appealed back then at module 1. But as parents, how the heck are we supposed to know that? And of course, your CPS attorney, court appointed attorney, is never going to give you that information. And so the moral of the story, or my point that I'm trying to get at, is the appeal that I put in for the TPR can only look at that very tail end and see if anything was done wrong, so to speak.
Right.
And of course, there really wasn't. So therefore, I didn't have, anything to appeal. And so I lost my appeal.
I fortunately, because of all this, I actually started studying law. And I have become very well versed. I've got attorneys all over the state of Alabama that I talk to. We consult. I send parents to them. They send parents to me. I teach parents how to write their own motions. I help them understand what the law is on their case, help them understand what they need to know so they're not left in the dark. And I represented myself in my own TPR trial. And the way that I did, I call it stacking your case for appeal. And I made sure that the things in my TPR, I didn't even bother calling any witnesses because I just let them bring in all them crap, because I knew that all their crap was going to be enough to, I objected to what I needed to object. I presented whatever evidence I needed to present just to show that they haven't done what they were supposed to do. And that's all I needed to do. That's all I needed to do was do that so that I can, I demanded twice that the termination be dismissed because they didn't have subject matter jurisdiction to do it. So I did those things in my TPR trial so that when I do go to the appeals court, I can address those. But because subject matter jurisdiction is actually something that can be brought up at any point, I can actually go back to that initial filing, and I can actually get them on that, because they alleged with my daughter in this initial filing, they alleged that my daughter was refusing to go home, which means, and that was the reason that they took her. That's what's in the filing. That's not what's in the indicated letter. The indicated letter, none of that's in the petition for removal. In the petition for removal, they were saying that my daughter was refusing to go home. Well, that would make her a juvenile delinquent, not a juvenile dependent, which means they did not have this being heard in the correct court, which means it was subject matter jurisdiction. But in that initial petition, you also can you can also bring up fraud upon the court at any time. And since that initial petition alleged that I had 7 felony warrants, and that was part of the reason that the judge kept my kids, or took my kids, that right there is enough that I can bring it up as well. So I've been waiting to play these cards till we got to the termination, because I didn't want to play them too soon. I needed to have all my aces at the end. So that's what we're getting ready to play.
Now, because your rights have been terminated, but you have an appeal like on status, they can't, like, let's say, are they still with the lesbian couple, your children? And are they wanting to adopt?
Yeah, they want to adopt.
And so, but what I was told is when I was waiting to see what was going to happen with the appeal, that the adoption can't really be finalized until you find out like what happens with the appeal. So is that similar to what?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, now, are they letting you still have any kind of visitation with them?
I have not seen my children since October. I have not seen my children since October.
I know, like when they did that goodbye visit,
Oh, I didn't even get a goodbye visit.
Oh God, I don't even think you would want it. It's like the sickest thing to even say. Oh Lord have mercy. Meaning the sad part of our goodbye visit was it was the first and the last time that both me and my husband were with all 3 of our boys. Sickening. I mean, granted, the foster parents, I don't know if this is like more, I don't even know what the correct terminology is that I want to state. They've let me see him twice since the TPR happened, which was back in July of last year, for 30 minutes each. And my husband hasn't been able to build up enough strength to go because he would probably end up saying or doing something that would end up completely ruining it. So
Yeah.
he's choosing to pick the bigger side, if that makes sense, and not going so that it won't ruin it for me because I get to at least bring my sons so that they get to see their brother. But my kids are, my oldest will be 11 this year, and my middle child will be 9. And even my 11-year-old, we saw and my youngest is going to be 3 this year. But we saw him last in January, and even on the way there, my 11-year-old actually said something along the lines of, when we got there, he wanted to really like say something to this foster parent, the dad, and I just had to look at him and be like, I know you really want to, and believe me, so do I. But we have to keep it inside to know that we still have the option in the future to
Yeah.
still see him ongoing. I mean, it's totally at their beck and call. They've said some of the harshest, worst things possible, meaning I am not allowed to contact them. I am not allowed to try and schedule any kind of visits. And if I do, they will immediately block me. Just basically, they will contact me whenever they feel like they want to let us see him. And it's just not so, it's hard for me to, obviously take it in and live with it day to day, but I never realized how hard it is for my kids too, his brothers, because throughout the whole case, yes, they would see him on a sibling visit once a week, but I didn't really think that maybe they were as attached as they really were to him until they realized, okay, we haven't now seen him in like, it got, our goodbye visit was in July, and then the first time after that we saw him wasn't until, I want to say, like October or November. So it was a good like 4 months. And that was where their real like feelings and everything showed. I mean, they would bring him up all the time and talk about him all the time. And it just broke my heart because I didn't even have an answer for them. Like,
Yeah.
Mom, when are we going to see, so and so? And I don't know, and then the feeling of me not even knowing. At least if they could give me like a ballpark range, like a maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, at least mentally I could, try and help it. But I mean, everything about it is just so sick. I mean, this last time around, it was like if you would have seen the excitement that my youngest had when he saw us. I mean, it almost makes me want to cry now. He like a ballerina dancing, almost like his legs couldn't stop going. Like, oh my god, he did. And then he went to like run to us, but then he got like bashful because he hadn't seen us in so long, and he just didn't know what to do. But then seeing his brothers, oh my gosh, he just like his 2 older brothers, lights of the. And I mean, he just the talking that he did, I mean, granted, they're obviously teaching him well or taking care of him well in that aspect. But other than that, it was like, I'll never forget this. It was like 20 minutes in, and we're only supposed to be there for 30 minutes, right? And so the foster dad looks at him and says, so and so, it's about getting time to go home, and we're going to go home. You ready to go home? And he looks at him, and he goes, no. And then he says it again. You don't want to go home with so and so and eat this and that. And he goes, no. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you tell him. I mean, and so he let him stay like a little like longer, but still, it's like me already getting there is already hating the fact that I'm going to have to say bye to him in 30 minutes, not know when I'm going to see him again.
Yeah.
But it's just sick to think that this whole corruption of CPS and them me thinking that they're trying to be, protecting children and doing the best in the welfare of children. It's just complete opposite. And how they just break these families apart and literally kidnap your kids and just, you know, adopt them out. And for
And,
what? It's like,
I was saying that I've been studying law, and I've actually become an advocate in Alabama doing all this. And I've actually got a couple of cases that I'm working now that are absolutely, mine is nothing compared to these cases. I have one case down in South Alabama. This mother, her children were taken. Her daughter was taken literally out of the hospital. She literally was kicked out of the hospital 3 hours after giving birth. CPS told the
what?
hospital that, yes, 3 hours. She gave birth 3 hours later. She was kicked out of the hospital. And they had taken the children. And they have put in all their information that the family is not in need of services and there is no indicated against this family. The children have been in foster care for a little over a year. They have never been adjudicated dependent. And they're now trying to go for
Wow.
termination. They're
Oh
trying to
my
go for
God.
termination of these children, but they've never had a dependency hearing. Not one time have they been adjudicated dependent. And mom actually had a meeting with CPS last week, and they changed the permanency plan to adoption by the current foster parents. And they actually instructed the fosters to go ahead and file the paperwork to start the process to adopt. She hasn't even had a termination hearing scheduled, but they're already
Wow.
filed to adopt. And then
That
I
was a
had,
question I always had too. I don't know if you know. I mean, I'm in California, so it might be different, but is there any kind of way I can find out or know when exactly the adoption is finalized for my child?
generally it's in probate court that is actually generally sealed.
Yeah, so I'll never be able to know like if and when it is now finally happened. And
I
can't they
mean, you
technically
can,
change his name on a birth certificate too if they wanted
yeah,
to?
yeah, they can
So,
change the
like
name.
going in the future, if they decide to just cut off all communication with me and I have no way of contacting them, like what would you advise someone like me or another parent to do in a situation of, putting my information somewhere for if and when my son decides to maybe try and find us?
There's
Is
adoption
there,
registries that you can actually go on to and put your information there.
or like I
Um,
heard ancestry, like DNA. Do
yeah,
you know
ancestry,
anything about
DNA,
that?
stuff like
Oh,
that. Nancy Barton, I know, has been really good about finding children.
oh, okay.
That's not something I've ever really tried to do is try to help find the kids. So how to go about doing that? I'm more of a boots on the ground kind of investigator. My mother was a private investigator years ago, and I'm one that will go dig through your trash as opposed to dig through your computer. So the way I would find it would be completely different from anybody, the way
That's
anybody else
funny you
might
say that because,
do it.
they have sent me maybe a handful of pictures since, the TPR happened. And I feel like I obviously am in the wrong field as far as where I have, my expertise in and where I have my actual job and make my money because I just always had that kind of like black sheep of a family type of personality, meaning I'm always been in such a horrible situation where I'm already looking at something in that light because I've always been kind of screwed over or done wrong or whatever. So in this kind of instance, here they are sending me a picture simply of, I think it was him at Christmas time. And I'm looking at everything in this picture, the background and this and that. And I already had an idea based off of many different things of where they lived, like this apartment complex, because she spoke too much in the beginning when we thought we were cool, right? But I remember a lot of things when the truth comes out, right? And I play things back and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why she did that. And so this picture, I knew the apartment complex and I knew it. I knew it because there was one time we went to an indoor play place and she conveniently at night, our visit was ending at 6 o'clock and there's only a handful of cars in the parking lot. I know what her car is. And she's now realizing, oh, shucks, maybe it's kind of obvious that now I'm going to be walking home, but I don't really want her to know that I'm walking. And so I try to play it cool, like I wasn't even paying attention, but I'm telling my husband, like, oh my God, she didn't even drive here tonight because we know that her apartment complex is across the street. Well, this picture, I'm looking in the background and I'll never forget when I pinned this out. The apartment complex is like one of those new high rise or whatever luxury apartment. And the fence, like on the little patio, is a certain like pattern. And I clue into that. And I'm like, there it is. I knew it. They do live there. And so there's been so many nights where I tell my husband, I'm like, I just so badly want to go and just stalk it and find out exactly which one. And, but for what? I mean, if anything, I know that they're Mormon. I knew what Mormon church they probably go to based off of the city. And I always wanted to think on Sundays, I just want to go and like maybe disguise myself and sit in this Mormon church just so I can see my son, but I don't think I could and actually then not do anything. Like, I don't think I could actually see him like within enough distance of me and not want to do something, which
Yeah.
obviously that would make everything bad. But you're just like me in the fact that if I want to find something out, I will, but whether or not will I benefit from it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's so many times that I've just wanted to so badly just go and like stalk or something just because, it's my child. But then at the same time, I'm like, what if I see them like abusing him? Or what if I just see
Mhm.
something that I'm really not okay with? Then it will make it worse. And, then I'll just want to go and like call his name out and be like, I'm here, But I
I mean,
mean, it's just,
I know exactly. I know the house that they live in. I know where they work. I know where my kids go to school. I know where they play sports. I know all of it.
oh, see, like with situations like that, I would definitely be off in like the side street watching him play the sport or practicing.
I do.
There was somebody on this
I know
show
some
not too
of them.
long ago that was making me crack up. One of his other hosts that does a show like this, um, it was a mom that just recently her son turned 18, and so she was able to. She made a book throughout all the years because she was only able to see her child 2 times a year on birthday and Christmas, and how sick it was that her parents had her child. But throughout all the other times, she knew what school he went to. So every play, every performance, whatever, she would disguise herself and she would be there taking pictures and everything and adding it to this book, adding it to this book. Finally, her son just turned 18. And the look on her eyes or face when she told us this on the show that she was able to finally give her son basically this book, meaning all these years you hear of how bad your mom must be and how not so good of a parent she is, but now all of a sudden you're looking through all these years of all these different things that your mom was technically there in the stands, basically watching you taking pictures. How could my mom really be such a horrible person if, and then all of the light, and then she goes, but the look on my parents' face when they realized that I was, at all these things, just the chuckle that she got of, she got a little like sucker punch out of it. But yeah, that would totally be me. I would be like stalking them on the sidelines just to be able to, watch them. I mean, as sick as that is, but yet we're the ones that are getting these children of ours taken from us. I mean,
and it's sad. I've actually got he's actually a really good friend of mine. We met about 2.5 years ago. His wife passed away. She killed herself 6 weeks after she gave birth to their 5th child. And CPS tried to take his kids because she killed herself. No other reason other than the fact that she's dead. Yes. So fortunately,
what, do they want him to kill himself too then? I mean, gosh darn.
I guess they actually placed the children on a safety plan out of state. They can't do that. That is completely not legal. So he was able to find me, and I was able to help him get his kids back out of the system back then. And then back in October of last year, they came again. They got into a situation again. And of course, we take similar steps to get his kids out of state, take them off the safety plan, and get them away from the whole situation. Well, November 14th, they went to court. This is Talladega County, Alabama CPS. They went to court, and 16 minutes after they filed the petition for removal, the judge signed the order giving them custody, stating in his order that he took testimony and considered all the evidence. 16 minutes had elapsed from the time that it was filed to the time that it was stamped that he made his order.
Oh my God.
He took these kids. Now, these children were not in the state. Talladega County Sheriff's Department, 3 days later, had this man arrested in another county, in my home, in fact, had another county bust into my home without a warrant and arrest this man for custodial interference. There was no warrant at all. The warrant was not issued until after he'd been in jail for 24 hours. By law in Alabama, if you are arrested on a criminal charge, if within the first 30 days of your being imprisoned, you request a preliminary hearing, it is supposed to be conducted within 21 days of the request. If it is not conducted, on day 22, you are legally supposed to be released from custody. Day 22 for this father was December 13th. He is still in jail. Instead of releasing him as they were required by law, they kept pushing the preliminary hearing until they got an indictment on him. And then they refused. After when the indictment came in, it took it from district court now to circuit court, which means circuit court no longer has the same obligation as district court. So it's been taken. A habeas was filed, and the habeas was denied. The appeals court denied it and said, basically saying the district court should have done their job. They didn't do it. That's his problem, not ours. So this man has been sitting in jail since November 17th for a charge on a crime that there was no crime. There was no crime. They're saying they charged him with taking his children from CPS.
Wow.
They didn't have his kids. He had his kids. They didn't have his kids. His dad had his kids. His dad and mom were safety plan. He's been sitting in jail all this time. His children are out of state. He's not allowed to have any communication with his children.
Wow.
And there's no allegations against him except for apparently one of his neighbors, and they actually named the neighbor in this document, said that the kids were walking around the neighborhood, and one of them said they were hungry.
Oh, Lordy.
So apparently that's reason to take these kids.
Yeah.
This
I
man
mean,
is in jail, in Talladega County Jail. And here's the thing that I found out. This was actually his judge, the CPS judge that took his kids, actually was on my case for a period. Come to find out, this judge, the reason he wasn't doing the preliminary hearing, he was actually the one handling the criminal case as well, was because he was in rehab for cocaine abuse.
oh,
So
Lord.
to do it.
It just gets worse and worse.
But when he took the children, he's using cocaine. He's sitting on the bench snorting cocaine.
Oh, my gosh.
And taking children. Talladega County Alabama juvenile court judge.
It's like the typical saying, too. It's like here you could possibly see like maybe a family or a child that maybe is needing like CPS to be called, and these children maybe needing to be taken out, and parents given some resources, but then they don't ever want to take those kids because usually they are like the unadoptable kids. So they just kind of like let them suffer in the abuse or neglect, but yet they want to then focus on these parents over here that they know that they want their children and just come up with all these falsified allegations. And it's just, that's the main thing that we're trying to hopefully one day, bring to justice, as far as I think the funding should be completely eliminated from CPS in its entirety. Because honestly, these social workers, they have what Mr. Davis has called like qualified immunity, where basically whatever they do, even if it is wrong, nothing ever happens.
They don't have qualified immunity if you work it right. Pearson versus Callahan is a case that actually basically says.
Real quick though, we're coming close to the end, so go ahead and share your thought, but then just keep in mind we're going to
end. Pearson versus Callahan says that they only have immunity if they were instructed to do the things that they're doing. So if you get into court and you can ask your worker, were you instructed to lie? Were you instructed to do these things? And they say no, they were not instructed. They've lost their immunity.
Yeah, but who would really state that?
Everyone. What social worker did it?
Really?
Yes. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, no, I wasn't told to lie. I wasn't told to lie. Because they're not expecting it to be asked as, were you demanded to do this? They're trying to say I wasn't told to lie, as in I'm not lying.
Yeah.
But when they sit there and say, no, I was not instructed to lie, that means when you prove that they've lied, they've lost the immunity.
See, I'm not a lawyer, so it gets all tricky with that.
I actually used this at one of my hearings, and the CPS attorney turned 10 shades of white when I pulled it up. Because
that's the main thing is learning from Mr. Davis, and the fact that not only if you do have the funds to hire, a private attorney in a CPS case, you definitely want to make sure you hire a CPS attorney, because a lot of people nowadays don't even realize that they could just be hiring, an attorney that's not even specialized in CPS cases. But, going with that, and kind of like the end note of it is, it's all about who's representing you. I mean, if you don't have the funds and you're left with these court-appointed attorneys, again, I mean, you're most likely going to end up with your kids being taken. I mean, that's just the moral of the story.
You can educate yourself as a parent. As a parent, you can educate.
I know, but usually, like in for instance, like myself, and what I've noticed, the trend seems to be is these poor, unfortunate parents end up educating themselves too late in the game.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, literally, my attorney for my youngest child said, and I'll close with this. She literally said at the TPR hearing on record that I have seen a lot of progress in the parents. And, I continue to see the progress, and, good job, blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, we are just out of time. If we had maybe just one more year, I could definitely see child returning home. But we are just out of time.
Yep.
Meaning what? Like, if you just said it yourself, that you could see the parents keep going in the way that whatever it is you need us to keep going. And in a year, you could see the child coming home. But guess what? Time's up. Like, how could this individual sleep? oh yeah, how could this individual go to bed at night knowing that now this poor child is going to be raised with complete strangers and possibly never know its biological family ever again, just because we didn't have one more year?
Yep.
It's like,
It's
wow.
it's
But
it.
anyways, did you have any final comments or thoughts that you maybe
Well, I
wanted to
was just
share
gonna say,
before?
if there's anybody in Alabama, I have a page that's Parents Helping Children. If you have a case in Alabama, join the page. Let me know that you
Is
saw me.
it, what platform is it under?
It's under Facebook. Sorry, Facebook page.
Okay,
Yep,
so
Facebook
Parents
page.
Helping Families, you said?
Parents Helping Children.
Children. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, if you ever want to come on my show again, you're more than welcome to. We can kind of have like a or a part two if you'd like, and
Yeah,
share
sure.
more knowledge that you have. And then remember, like I said, if you're interested in becoming a host, go ahead and contact Grace or Mr. Davis. You said you've talked to him before, and tell him you're interested, and I'm sure he would be more than happy to have you
Yeah,
come on and have somebody from Alabama
yeah,
do these
that'd be
shows.
great. That'd be great. Thanks, Deidre.
Okay, Kim. Well, good luck to you on the rest of your journey. Keep fighting, and we wish the best of luck for you. And hopefully, we'll have you on again soon. Okay.
Always. Thanks, Deidre.
All right. All right. Bye.
Bye.